We need to get started because we have a lot of material to cover. And I'd like to have prayer before we proceed. Our Father in heaven, we invite your presence through the Holy Spirit. Desire that all forces of evil be prohibited from interfering and being in this room. And this is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. The first presentation I want to do this afternoon would be titled the Ayurveda, as you notice there on your program. Ayurveda is referring to the practice of healing of India, ancient Indian healing. Do all of you have one of the handouts? You should have a handout so you can follow. The purpose of the handout is so you are not busy trying to take notes and then miss what I'm saying next. Also, to help you remember what we've said, and as mentioned previously, a little more accuracy and remembrance of what is presented. All right, we have here now, we're going to look at the wisdom of the East, Ayurveda. What is the wisdom of the East? In 1999, I attended a women's ministry outreach program from a fairly large church very near where I live, Adventist church. And they presented three basic healing mechanisms. All of them I placed in the occult, but this was the women's ministry. And there was a comment made there, we are presenting the wisdom of the East. We don't know exactly what it was, but it seems to work, and therefore we are sharing it with you. I was rather surprised. I wrote them a letter. It was by nurses and others. This is not uncommon to find that these so-called healing therapies are being used for Adventist outreach, in health outreach. I've been invited several places to be a part of that, and I get there, some of this type of thing is being presented. I was at a camp meeting, and I was presenting in Canada and presenting a seminar during the week. And in the evening, one of the ministers was explaining how he was using those techniques for his personal outreach. So this type of thing has come into the church far more than most people realize, far more. And so it's our privilege and our purpose today to be able to share with you, hopefully, that you can share with others. They in turn can be informed. We have 1 Kings 4, verse 30. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of the East. So instead of the women's ministry talking about the wisdom of the East, it'd be better to talk about the wisdom of the Bible. Far better. So Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the East country and all the wisdom of Egypt. And there came of all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all kings of the earth, which had heard his wisdom. For you have forsaken your people, the house of Jacob, because they are filled with eastern ways. They are soothsayers, like the Philistines, and they are pleased with the children of foreigners. Now, we're looking at Ayurveda, ancient Indian healing tradition. We look here, according to the wisdom of Ayurveda, the mind, body has the intelligence to heal itself. What do we mean by that? As we look here, I need to get coordinated a little better. There we are. That according to the wisdom of Ayurveda, the mind and the body has the intelligence to heal, has within itself the innate intelligence. Yes, God placed in our genetics mechanisms by which we heal. God's in control. This is speaking of a supposed wisdom going through the body apart from a living God that has all the intelligence of the universe. You just have to learn how to open it up. And so if you can manipulate it with some sort of mechanism, then you can gain the benefit that it has to share with you. Ayurveda, the life knowledge, actually means eternal life, immortality. They're teaching immortality by following this Indian tradition of healing. Its central tenet is that life is a combination of body, mind, senses, and spirit. More than a mind-body system. Nothing exists for the pre-existing and working of a supreme intelligence consciousness. An elemental, all-powerful, all-pervading spirit energy that expresses itself in and through creation. This comes from the Center for Health and Healing, Department of Integrative Medicine, Mount Sinai, Beth, Israel. So we're looking at the definition of the name that is placed with the traditional Indian healing. East Indian, not of course our American Indians. Let's look again at the little diagram that I put together that we had the previous night. That supposedly in this creation, the earth, the cosmos, and man all came from the blending of a two-part cosmic energy, and that cosmic energy flowing through them thereafter in a dualistic condition, dualistic status. And that there is this absolute, instantaneous, constant communication between every atom of the universe. This is the foundation for astrology and nature worship, sun worship. You see the signs there: paganism, neo-paganism, pantheism, and the word panentheism says, oh, yes, there is a living God, but he left his divinity within you. Innately you have divinity within. That's a very common one throughout Christendom today. The origins are explained in this concept that there is this creative principle, the cosmic energy. It is one, it is self, it is universal energy. These are some of the synonyms here written. Ultimate unified energy field. Consciousness, that's a common one when you hear people talk about consciousness. Or chi, the most common that you've heard is the word chi, all connected with China or the Orient. And so that is referring to this concept of this life force energy. And so the manifest universe can be seen as the play of two great antagonistic forces which continually create, sustain, and destroy all that exists in the universe. Now, Ayurveda is a system that has its intent to be efficient in helping move through the body at all times, efficiently, abundantly, this cosmic energy. So the intelligence that operates the cosmos, that governs the migration in seasons, orbits the planets, also operates at the level of human physiology, according to this philosophy. The sole function of Ayurveda is to promote the flow of this intelligence, this cosmic force, through man. That's the foundation point here. And the knowledge of Ayurveda has its roots in the Vedas, the sacred writings of India, from which many spiritual philosophies and religions have sprung. These include the Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, yoga, and others. It is a science not only of the physical body, but it goes beyond into the understanding of consciousness itself, so they say. This is from California College of Ayurveda. Ayurveda's sister, which is yoga, is quite well known for its physical stretching exercises. Yoga is actually much more than this. It is a complete science and philosophy leading to enlightenment. What is enlightenment? That's when you become God. When you go to nirvana, spirit heaven. It's the process of a lifetime, and in their teachings, many lifetimes, doing meditation, doing yoga through the lifetimes, and eventually you come up to this you have made the dualism inside into oneness, and you join that oneness power permeating the universe. This is the concept. All right. Now, the religions of the East and their doctrines, they have this belief of the origin from oneness. The dualistic power that somehow became one, the coin that has an image on either side lost its image, became just a coin as an illustration. And that the pursuit of life is to get into that non-dual condition. We have yin-yang inside, power running through in these two, and the pursuit of life is to bring that into oneness. When we do, we escape reincarnation in this philosophy. And you then become everything as there's no sin, there's no wrong, there's no right, and at the death then you move into spirit heaven. That's the goal. The goal to join the spirit world of nirvana. I mentioned last night, and some of you were here and some were listening on the streaming program, about the philosophy from Hinduism is that this universal energy, this cosmic spirit, comes in 7 different levels of electronic frequency. Science only knows the one that the ultimate speed is the speed of light, 860,000 miles per second, speed of light, or the speed of electricity. But by their intuition, by their connecting with the spirit world, they tell us that there are 6 levels of frequency, electronic frequency, higher than the speed of light. Science is not able to find these, but they feel strongly that so. The first, which is the second and third level above E1. E1 stands energy 1, then we have energy 2 and 3. That level is supposed to make 2 additional bodies outside of my physical body, electronic bodies of some nature. And that is the astral body, the etheric body. And then the next speed of E3 gives you a causal body and a mental body. You see, let me show you a picture here. There is a picture illustrating this concept where they do it by light, trying to show those extra bodies that have, and these have supposedly contact with other bodies and so forth. I don't want to get too far into it because there's a limit to my knowledge. I only went so far as I studied this out, trying to avoid getting caught in it myself, to learn about it, to be able to explore, but I never ever took time to learn how to do any of it. That was zero in my interest. And so at this point, I believe the Lord has still protected me from that. But I know people that have done it, and it has gotten the better of them on that part. So let's go back. We'll go forward. Actually, we need to go back here. Does this go back? Anyway, we had those levels above. I need to get back here. It doesn't go back. All right. The levels of energy that were higher than 4, it was 5, 6, and 4, 5, and 6. Those are levels of energy. The speed are supposed to affect the brain, and plants are supposed to be made with that level of energy. And that's why vegetarianism is also popular. I guess I didn't push hard enough on it. I want to go back. One more? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I just push harder. All right. Here we see now the E4, E5, E6. Those are supposed to affect the brain, that energy that comes at that speed, and that is to be found in plants. That's one reason we look at essential oils later today. This is involved. And being a vegetarian, you now are partaking of energy that comes through at a higher level. That's because a lot of this movement of being a vegetarian are based on these principles, these supposed principles. Then you get up to E7 is when you reach enlightenment, godhood. There's a whole lot of names for that. Atonement is one of them. Now we move forward. This aura that's supposed to be about us is supposed to be able to be seen by those that are deep into the occult, and they tell us they can on there. I'll not deal further there. That Ayurveda concept that disease now is a result of an imbalance of the energy that's flowing through. The whole purpose of Ayurveda is to move it through efficiently so that eventually they can get out of the reincarnation and into spirit heaven. And that is done through yoga, through meditation, and those practices are supposed to bring this about. The disease is an end result, they say, of an imbalance of energy. That it is stagnated, or it's stopped, or it's overabundance, the yin versus the yang, something out of balance. And so these treatments all have a purpose to bring a balance back to this supposedly flowing through cosmic energy. That's the East. Chinese is the same, explained in a little different manner. Now, so the satanic concept for health and healing is balance. We're accustomed to the words yin and yang. In the Hindu, they have a little different terms for that, but it's the same concept. The treatment methods, they're the same. So if you have illness, the treatment then with these would be the same thing as you do as the spiritual concept of moving forward, moving toward enlightenment, which is the practice of the yoga, the practice of the meditation, and so forth. They consider they're one and the same, and that's what has been imported to the Western world. And this is a entering wedge to get us to be thinking in the way of the Eastern, the worldview. If we feel better and feel that it has helped us, then, hey, it must be right. Something's wrong. Something is correct here, and I want to know more about it. And once we give our will, the devil can't touch us if we don't give him our will. And partaking of these, my understanding, we have given him our will, even though we knowingly hadn't even thought of it. We have reached over and put ourselves on Satan's ground. And then we have lost our protection. But meditation is the most fundamental act, they tell us, as I read and study this, and I have conversed with people that have been deeply involved in this. Meditation is the most fundamental tool. That the other therapies are without much benefit unless there is the Eastern style meditation, which is to put the brain at rest, not an active thinking process like we would do. The biblical meditation would be to actually contemplating thinking. The other is using some sort of methods to stop the thinking. And actually when that does it, there's a change of the brain rhythm. The electronic rhythm of the brain alters from what they call a beta into an alpha. Then it can eventually go on deeper into a theta and a total rest. So there's yoga exercises, a diet, different types of herbs, mineral substances, massage with essential oils, aromatherapy, and cleansing of the body systems from toxins. And we'll, at the end of this presentation, we'll deal with that so it'll be better understood. Because we hear a lot about the cleansing routines. I wonder where they come from. Probably out of the East originally. As I looked at the spirit prophecy for anything that fit into the cleansing of the impurities and so forth, what I found was the recommendation of a fast, a dietary fast. Water inside, water outside, and fasting for hours or for a few days. That would be, we have built in our systems several organs that detoxify chemicals, and that's the way to do it in a fast. All right, meditation as the primary and fundamental tool in this balancing act. We want to look a little further. We've seen people do this, and it's very common today. When this first began to be popular in the early 70s and late 60s, everybody knew this was from the East and was forbidden in the Christian world. Now, here it is 50 years later, and many people have been born since then and don't realize that at one time this is totally foreign to we people here in the United States. Yeah, but it is part of the culture almost today. What are the essentials of meditation, of the Eastern style of meditation? To bring that brain to a rest where it may be able to think a little bit, but it's not dealing with real contemplation of things. It's alive, it's aware that things are about, but it's not in a true thinking. They go for relaxing your muscles. Now, all four of these together, or any combination, or any single one done enough, can bring about the change from the beta brain wave into the alpha. Starting, and that's where you begin to lose your control and the inhibitions of things you wouldn't choose, and another power can take over. So muscle relaxation, they will be teaching that you get into position and forcibly cause all of the muscles that you have think about to be in a total relaxed state. Deep rhythmic breathing called a pranayama. This isn't just to put oxygen in there. This is so that cosmic spirit that's out in the air, in the breath, is to put a lot of that into your system. So a deep rhythmic breathing, a pranayama, and you can put a person into a deep, or they can put themselves into a state of total relaxation, of non-thinking, simply by breathing alone this way. Passive of the mind, using a mantra. Mantra means a non-thinking. Using some word, even a Bible verse. And this is where it's catching. I've had some pretty devout people say, well, they simply use a Bible verse. It's all the same. A repetition. Whether it's Bible, whether it's anything else, it'll do the same. And asana is yogic postures. The very posture that you put a person in has its origination representing a particular god, Hindu god. And when you put yourself into those positions, in actuality, you're allowing yourself to call upon that god to possess you. This is what I'm told by the people who have been deep into this and came out and are Christians and trying to warn people of this deception. So we have the four things: muscle relaxation, deep breathing, passive mind, and the position of sitting or whatever. There are several styles of the Eastern meditation, and some we're unaware of and hadn't thought about that. And these I've taken out of books. That one was a book that was talking about these different ones, written by a Hindu, or actually he was not a Hindu, but he was in one of the side beliefs. Transcendental meditation you heard about, and there they are given a couple words to say over and over as their mantra. Those words are names of Hindu gods. They don't know that. But they are asking those gods to possess them. I told this, I was in right near our college there in the East, in Massachusetts. And I was presenting this to a church. And afterwards a young man came up, a black man, and he says, "How did you know that?" Says, I couldn't remember where I'd picked it up. He says, there's a large ashram there, a Buddhist ashram, and he had been a member worker in it, and now he was attending the Adventist church there. And he says, "You're right. That's a secret. But you're right. He says, I bowed down in front of two images, and they give me those names on that part." So transcendental meditation is deeply connected. And that's what made that singing group, what was they called? The first one that came from England. Beatles. Yeah, the Beatles. They made this very popular around the world. And they were for transcendental meditation. They actually went over and lived in the ashrams over there in India for a while and come back and then spread it around the world. Have you heard of mindfulness? Have you heard that name? This has permeated the world in the last 15 or so years. It's nothing but Buddhist meditation. The Hindu, we've been talking more about the Hindu style, but this is the Buddhist style. But it has worked into psychiatry, into psychology. And there's It's worked its way into almost all aspects of the healing arts. And it's nothing but pure Buddhist meditation. There's a book called The Buddha Pill. Have anybody ever hear of The Buddha Pill? It's a book you can get, and it was written by 2 English authors. They were psychiatrists working in the penitentiary system in England, using these methods with the inmates, feeling they could change their very characters. So they set out, these 2 authors set out to establish a book, write a book that would contain all of the quality studies in the world showing the benefit of mindfulness and Eastern meditation. By quality studies, ones that stand up to the rigors of the scientific world, saying this is a study that we can have trust in because of its methodology of putting it together, its numbers of people over time, and so forth. And what they were surprised, they found none. The closest they came to it was a student working on his doctoral degree in psychology, devised his own study to have a placebo. Because all of the other studies, they just analyze and says, well, at the end of this, here, these people, how much better they are. But this young man, he put a placebo in it, that he had a person in doing the meditation, another one over in the doing not a meditation, but thinking on something, a study. And it wound up, and he had numbers of these so that it meant something, and they wound up with as much benefit as the ones doing the Hindu style. And nobody else had done that. When they got through with this book, what they had started out to do, they were doing the opposite. They were exposing it and saying, this is nothing but teaching Buddhism. It had its origin from a Buddhist doctor at Harvard University. And he has propagated this the whole world, and it's just used rampantly through all mind sciences today. What it is simply putting your mind at rest with a little different technique and with a different name. Yoga is actually a meditation method. And then there is meditations in movement. The Tai Chi, the rounded motions. Chi, that's that universal spirit. Tai, they're moving that spirit through the body. Oh, this is brought into nursing homes and everywhere else as exercise. But what it is bringing in the entering wedge to bring in the Eastern thought eventually. Okay, the martial arts are all based upon this. Martial arts had its start in a particular monastery in China. A Hindu came there and he began to teach certain things. And the martial arts is simply moving this energy in their body. Now eventually, as they get higher into the hierarchy of it, the actual spirit is what gives them their tremendous power, being able to do and break big blocks of ice and so forth. They get a paranormal spirit, and that's what they search for from the black belt up. And at the very top is a person having direct contact with the spirit world, that then all of those below him follow his directions. 2 years ago, I was at Hayden Lake Church, and joined me was Eric Wilson. He's a man that he became a member of the Hall of Fame in the martial arts. He earned 7 black belts in this technique. And then he was a Christian. He went to church, Seventh-day Adventist church, all this time. And eventually he saw the light. And he now was exposing and showing that. And as he got to the black belt and above, he began to realize what he was after was this universal spirit that gave him power. And he then reverts, and now he's exposing. And we spent several days at Hayden Lake 2 years ago working together, presenting a seminar on this. Now, there's another book called The Relaxation Response that's written by a Dr. Benson. It's nothing but Eastern meditation, but with the English terms, and it's been accepted by the armed services, teaching their recruits, saying it keeps them out of the drug usage, but it's nothing but the same on that. And these are done. Visualization is putting in your mind, drawing a picture, imagining and expecting it as you imagine it, that it will happen because you're manipulating this power. It's called visualization or imagery. Certain type of prayers is part of the Eastern meditation nature. Contemplative centering prayer. Spiritual formation, a religious kind of movement that has moved into our church and many other churches, actually has inserted the Eastern style of prayer in it, and that's its real danger. So we have the contemplative centering. Lectio Divina is a Catholic method of simply saying a verse over and over, repeating a Bible verse. The breath prayer, moving along. As you take a breath, you say, Lord, help me. And as you breathe it out, you have another comment as you walk along. This is a rotation, a repetitive type thing that brings about this style of meditation. And walking in a labyrinth to find the circle. These are methods that are so deceptive, people haven't had a clue that they were partaking of these things. But what is the real good type of meditation? Within my heart, we'd meditate on God's Word, on His works, on His law, on redeeming grace, on God's deeds, His character. It leads to action, obedience it leads to. Be still and know that I am God. Let's take a look momentarily here. As the Hindu breathes in, he feels this universal energies in the air. He breathes it in. It goes down to two imaginary channels, the Pingala, the Ida, and goes to the bottom of the pelvis, where the bottom chakra. In the body, supposedly, there are these 7 energy centers that start in the pelvis, come up to the body, and wind up on top of the head. And this energy then goes down, and then is supposed to work its way up through meditation, through yoga exercises, till it gets to the top of the head. Here is a Newsweek journal featuring this very concept. Supposedly those chakras, those energy centers, are in color of the rainbow on that part. And then there is supposed to be on the outside of the body a glow that people that are deep in the occult can see the aura of somebody else, electromagnetic force, they say. However, the rest of us can't see it. I don't doubt with what they see that there's some power that shows them. Walter Vaith said he at one time could see that in other people when he was involved into this type of belief. There was a book written, and it's called Dwalko's Intermediate Studies of the Human Aura. That's hard to read there at the bottom. But I took this picture from this book. This book was dictated by a spirit to a lady by the name of Prophet. And it tells us that that's energy that comes down and goes down the Pingala and the Ida to the bottom, then begins to work its way up in an undulating manner through yoga, through meditation, through these different practices, and eventually gets up to the top and moves up toward, as we see this picture here, that as it begins to get up higher in the atmosphere, you become Christ, and then eventually you become divine, your divine self. And this is all accomplished by meditation and yoga, visualization, and chakra cleansing. Now this is the type of thing, these acts that have been brought here as a health issue that many people, we call it Christian yoga. Christian this, an oxymoron, because there's no way it can be. It's diabolically opposite on that, but it's become very popular. Now I'll give you some quotations. This chart came from Eric Wilson. Yoga asanas. The Ayurveda sister, yoga, is quite well known for its physical stretching exercises. Yoga is actually much more than this. It is a complete science and philosophy leading to enlightenment, godhood. California College of Ayurveda. Yoga. Yoga is the journey of the self, through self, to the self. What does that mean? That universal energy is called self, on this, the synonym. Etymologically, from word study, it is connected to the English word yoke, which means union with God. And there it's a union with Brahman, their chief god. They have many gods, but the chief god is Brahma. Or union with the little self, with the divine self. The divine self would be Brahman. The innate spirit. Yoga is primarily a spiritual discipline. The yoga exercises. The purpose is to promote the flow of this universal energy through the body and to stimulate the chakras to distribute this cosmic energy to the other parts of the body. Now, raise the kundalini. How many have heard that word kundalini? There's a number. All right. Kundalini, it means serpent power. Supposedly in our pelvis, all of us, according to this philosophy, we have innately, laying there latently, a serpent power, a power which is the creative power that created us to begin with, an extension of that. And by physical activity and yoga and so forth, you can arouse it, raise it, and bring it up through the body. So to stimulate the activity of the chakras, the yoga exercises are designed to do this. To stimulate that, to raise the kundalini, the serpent power, to create spiritual awareness. Now, here's one of the poses. So many of the poses are snake-like in position or activity. And we have the salutation to the sun, to the rising or to the setting of the sun, and these different motions in yoga. The serpent power, the kundalini. So here we have, that brings that snake power up, and it meets at the top, over the top of the head on this in the Indian lore. This is a picture taken out of Indian literature. And you see it here. These are the cobra heads. When this happens, this is raising working toward that enlightenment, that godhood that you're working toward all the time. The goal and meditation of yoga, the means by which the human soul may be completely united with the Supreme Spirit pervading the universe, and thus attain liberation, getting out of reincarnation. I have here a little pamphlet, and there's a few of them left still out there on the counter out there, that is Perilous Practices, a look at yoga from a Christian perspective, by Yvonne Shelton, the lady in the 3ABN, Johnny Shelton's wife. This is recently she wrote. You can find them in the ABC. They're $3 there. I have a few. I bought a bunch from her, and there's a few left. We had some given out some of the other nights, but a fantastic article that she has given in detail on this. She was earning her living before she joined 3ABN in working in the occultic activities, and then she had an understanding of where she was and changed. And so this is really a phenomenal little magazine that you can get. There's a few left out there. You're welcome to. And for more of them, you can check with your 3ABN bookstore. But the goal of meditation and yoga, the means by which the human soul may be completely united with the Supreme Spirit pervading the universe, and thus attain liberation. And the goal in meditation yoga, the means by which the human soul may be completely united with that spirit. And get their comment from Let Us Reason Ministries. Here's a quotation from a man that was in it, and he's now trying to expose. The poses that they so diligently practice in the stretching are named after Hindu gods. And one that is already, and what one is actually doing is calling on them in that worshipful pose. Calling on those gods, they are bowing and for all intents and purposes worshiping that God. Our God says, you shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God. So this is the depth of the yoga and the yoga exercises. Well, you say, well, I do this, or I believe in it, but I don't get involved in any of the thought of the Eastern process. You can't separate it. You may think so, but you can't. There's an article out by a lady that for 40 years was head of a nunnery or so that was teaching these in India, and then she came to Christianity, and she says it's impossible to separate it from the religion. You may think you do, and those that are practicing it may well find themselves with some sort of strange pain that the doctors can't find or can't solve, and when they then stop the yoga, it disappears. I was presenting up in northern Washington on this, and some people came afterwards and says, we know a person this is happening to right now. And this particular article this lady put on the internet was the best that I had ever seen, outside of theologians saying you cannot separate and say, well, I just don't have anything to do with the religion. You can't separate it. It's millennia of time, and it's been the devil's workshop. And the idea that you can do it, you're fooling yourself. You may not think so. The General Conference Committee for Spiritual Biblical Research Committee in 1987 put out a large paper on this whole thing. And they felt in their studies, from the doctors, the ministers, and those that put big study, that it's impossible to separate anything that had been consistent over time, a part of the occultic activity, to take it apart and think that you're not getting some influence. The devil's power is still there on that part. I was fortunate in the book I wrote, this book, Exposing Spiritualistic Practices and Healing. The General Conference, the Biblical Research Committee, let me put in the appendix their 30-page report of that 1987, looking at the New Age and Seventh-day Adventists. It just blends with my book like that. And I didn't know about it till I'd finished my book, but I found out about it and got permission directly from the leader of the research committee to utilize that in the book. All right. We spoke already about the book on relaxation. It's simply name changes on that part, and we'll not go further there. Let us move forward. I want to get here something about the massage. Now, Swedish massage, great. It's good stuff. Very effective. It's increasing circulation and probably a lot of chemistry changes that we're not even aware of. But along comes the devil, and he hijacks something that's good, and he inserts his dogma into it. So here he has a massage, and they use the essential oils to rub into spots on the body. There's supposedly spots like the Chinese say they got acupuncture spots that will help balance the energy that's flowing through. But in days gone by, they did a different technique. They took a red hot iron and burned those spots. And here are woodcuts that go back in the 1400s showing the different burns in applying this particular therapy supposed to balance the energy. A tough way to go. All right, the herbs. They're used primarily to, they say, to connect with the cosmic spirit of the universe. Will not put much time. So much of the herbology of China and of India is not dealing with the biochemistry so much of the herb as we like to think. It's whether this herb is, whether it's hot or cold, or whether it's yin or yang, and we're trying to balance energy with it. But many people in herbology are not aware of that, and they're looking for some biochemistry response on there. And there are a number of herbs that have a lot of biochemistry response, no question. Many of our medicines have their origin out of herbs. That's fine. But beware, be cautious to realize that the books that you get on the herbs from those will list the herbs as hot or cold, yin or yang. So you're stepping into that area too, unrealizing what you're getting into. Okay, they were used as kind of energy to connect with the cosmic energy of the universe, is what so much. The essential oils we'll do later a full story on it, but that comes in. Supposedly the essential oils contain the cosmic energy, and you're applying the cosmic energy. That's their purpose. And it's very popular in the church, the essential oils, and it's not in the background, it isn't the biochemistry that is really what they're trying to do. It's supposedly bringing that spirit. We'll have it in more detail and be easier to understand a little bit later. All right, aromatherapy, pretty much the same. You put it in water or something and let the fumes come out. About a third of the essential oils have aromatic capabilities and can do that. Now, let's take a look at the cleansing technique, pancharkama, which is the cleansing of these chakras, so-called. And they do this by stimulating it. We look first at, every so often they will put a tube in the nose and put different chemicals in there, and the people will pour out a huge amount of mucus, and this is cleansing the chakra up and behind the nose. What it's doing is irritating tremendously, and the body's trying to protect itself. But this is supposedly clearing out any improprieties, impurities, to keep the chakra from functioning. And then we have something that promotes vomiting. Now, if you go to emergency room and you've taken some poison, they'll give you Ipecac, which will cause you to vomit. And there's probably had their origin way back finding this substance, because this is a routine. People in Hinduism will try to cleanse their chakras by promoting vomiting every so often. And also for the bowels, laxatives. And medicated enemas, 105 so different types. And there are machines that you can watch the fluid coming and going from your bowel to cleanse those chakras. Not needed. In fact, not good. And then they believe in urine therapy, drinking your morning urine to cleanse your body. This is a practice in Russia also. And when Russia opened up back there in about 1993, many of our people in the church over there were practicing this. When the Americans and others began to come in, and the doctors began to help them understand what they were dealing with, then that fell out. I was there in one town presenting this philosophy, showing them these things. And so I asked how many here had done it, and several had. And one that says, "How long since you did it?" "Well, 2 years ago." "What made you change?" "I joined the church," he said. But he was drinking the morning urine yet for a cleansing. This is all a part of this Hindu understanding. And they put it on topically. Actually, I sat on a platform in a church in Moscow with several pastors, and one was trying to tell me how they use it to cleanse a wound and so forth. And I said, "We don't. It's something we discard." And he couldn't quite accept that. That was built in pretty deep in their belief. The peril of theory of man's inherent power. If Satan can so befog and deceive the human mind as to lead mortals to think that there is an inherent power in themselves to accomplish great and good works, they cease to rely upon God to do for them that which they think there is power in themselves to do. So we are taught and we believe that God controls all the power, and it is His will when He partitions it. It is not inherently within us that we can manipulate by putting needles in our body or getting into particular positions or mental status. Quite an opposite revelation. And Revelation 17 says, "And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of the great tribulation, have washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb." And when we get into these things, we are tasting of the forbidden fruit. So my warning is, have nothing to do with them, and warn others as you're able. I will move next to the Chinese traditional medicine, and then we'll have a short break. If I say 5 minutes, it always turns into 10 or 15, but we'll go for 5 at that point. All right, give me a moment to change here. This is not my computer, and so I'm not accustomed with it. Maybe, you'll help me get to the next one. I'm handicapped, yeah. Yes?
How about homeopathic?
Yeah, homeopathic. We won't have time to cover it in the lecture that I have, but it's the same thing. The doctor that started it believed in the occult, and he is simply saying the plant or whatever substance